The morning sun cast long shadows across the playground of New Haven Orphanage. 342 children from dozens of different worlds laughed and played together, their voices mixing in a happy chorus that echoed across the green fields. Sister Marie Castellanos watched them with a warm smile, her weathered hands folded over her worn apron. "Look, Sister Marie," called out little Tomoko Chen, an 8-year-old human girl with bright black eyes. She held up a small toy spaceship, painted in bright blue and silver. "I made it fly like the real ones," the old nun chuckled. "Very good, little one. Perhaps you will pilot real ships among the stars someday." Around them, children of many species played together without a care in the world. Young Zalani with their soft fur chased human children in a game of tag. 3 Korthak youngsters, their scales gleaming in the sunlight, built sand castles with careful precision. Even 2 small Vexhi, their crystalline forms catching the light like living jewels, joined in the games. This was what New Haven represented. Hope, unity. A place where orphaned children from across the galaxy could find family, regardless of what world they came from or what they looked like. Sister Marie had spent 30 years building this haven, and she was proud of every moment. High above, invisible to the naked eye, Zarthul warships moved through space like silent predators. Their long, sleek hulls were designed for one purpose: destruction. Admiral Thexavar studied the planet below through his ship's sensors, his reptilian features cold and calculating. "Target confirmed," reported his weapons officer, a younger Zarthul named Kexron. "The human military installation shows significant activity." Thexvar's forked tongue flicked out, tasting the recycled air of the bridge. "Excellent. The humans have grown too comfortable in this sector. Time to remind them that the hegemony of Zarthul tolerates no weakness." "Sir," Kexron hesitated. "The scans show unusual readings, large numbers of small life forms. Could there be civilians present?" The Admiral's yellow eyes narrowed. "Humans always hide behind their weak. That is why they will never be true warriors. Fire when ready." On New Haven, the morning assembly was beginning. Sister Marie rang the old brass bell that called all the children to gather in the main courtyard. They came running from all directions, their faces bright with excitement for the day ahead. The older children helped the younger ones find places to sit on the soft grass. "Good morning, my children," Sister Marie said, her voice carrying easily across the courtyard. "Today we have wonderful news. The supply ship from Earth brought us new books and games. After lessons we will—" The sky above them suddenly blazed with terrible light. The plasma beam struck with the force of falling stars. The beautiful stone buildings that had housed generations of orphaned children simply vanished, turned to dust and fire in an instant. The playground where so many had learned to laugh again became a crater of melted glass. The gardens where the children had grown flowers together were transformed into burning ash. In less than 10 seconds, it was over. Captain Elena Vasquez received the distress signal while her ship, the UES Defiant, was patrolling 3 systems away. The automated message was brief and horrible. "New Haven Orphanage under attack. Multiple plasma strikes detected. No survivors detected. Repeat, no survivors detected." Elena's hands shook as she read the message again. New Haven Orphanage. She knew that place. Every human in space knew that place. It was supposed to be safe. It was supposed to be protected. "All hands emergency jump to New Haven system," she commanded, her voice tight with emotion. "Maximum speed." The journey took 6 hours. 6 hours of hoping the message was wrong. 6 hours of praying they would find survivors. 6 hours of growing dread as more reports came in from passing ships. When the Defiant arrived in orbit around New Haven, Elena stood on her bridge and stared at the screens in shock. Where the orphanage had stood, there was only a smoking crater. The beautiful buildings were gone, the playgrounds were gone, everything was gone. "Ma'am," her communications officer said quietly, "we're picking up a weak life sign. Very weak." Elena transported down to the surface with her marine unit. These were hardened soldiers who had seen combat across the galaxy. They had fought pirates and raiders without flinching. But when they saw what remained of New Haven, several of them fell to their knees and wept. The life sign led them to a small bunker that had somehow survived the attack. Inside, they found a single survivor, Tomoko. Chen. The little girl sat in the corner, clutching the melted remains of her toy spaceship. Her clothes were torn and dirty, her face streaked with tears. They said they were just playing war games in the sky, Tomoko whispered when Elena knelt beside her. Sister Marie told us not to be scared. She said the pretty lights were just ships playing. Then everything got very bright and very loud. Elena gathered the child in her arms, her own tears falling freely now. Around her, the Marines worked in silence, collecting what little remained. Dog tags, melted jewelry, small toys, anything that might help identify the victims. The official reports came in over the following hours. 342 children dead, 28 staff members dead, all killed instantly by plasma bombardment from Zarthul warships. The attack had lasted exactly 9 seconds. Within hours, the story spread across the galaxy. News networks carried images of the crater where the orphanage had stood. They showed pictures of the children who had lived there, smiling faces from dozens of different worlds. They played recordings of Sister Marie's last transmission, her voice calm and reassuring even as death fell from the sky. The Zarthul High Command issued their statement 12 hours after the attack. It was read by Admiral Thexvar himself, his reptilian features showing no emotion. The hegemony regrets the unfortunate collateral damage that occurred during legitimate military operations against human military installations. We advise human colonists not to place civilian infrastructure near strategic military assets. The Galactic Council met in emergency session. Representatives from 100 worlds expressed shock and outrage. They called for investigations. They demanded justice. They passed resolutions condemning the attack. And then they waited for humanity's response. The response came in a form no one expected. Silence. Human space went completely quiet. No diplomatic communications. No trade negotiations. No response to calls for comment. The vast network of human colonies, ships, and stations simply stopped talking to the outside galaxy. For 72 hours, this silence continued. Alien diplomats tried to contact human officials. Trade partners sent urgent messages about suspended shipments. Even allies found their calls unanswered. The galaxy began to grow nervous. Humans were known for their emotions, their quick responses, their loud protests when wronged. This silence was something new, something frightening. On the third day, deep beneath the surface of Luna, the Human Defense Consortium convened for the first time in 150 years. In a chamber carved from solid rock, the most powerful humans in the galaxy gathered around a single table. At the head of that table sat Fleet Admiral Chen Okafor, a man whose family had served humanity for generations. His grandfather had been a hero in the Centauri Wars. His father had negotiated the Peace of Titan. Now it was his turn to make history. Before him, holographic displays showed not battle plans or fleet positions, but something much simpler. The eyes, faces of 342 dead children. Admiral Okafor looked at each face for a long moment. Then he looked up at the assembled leaders of humanity and spoke just 4 words. They killed our children. In that moment, the galaxy's most peaceful species began to prepare for war. The chamber beneath Luna City had not seen such a gathering in over a century. The walls were carved from solid moon rock, decorated with the names of every human world. In the center, a massive table made from earth oak bore the weight of humanity's greatest decision. Fleet Admiral Chen Okafor stood at the head of the table, his weathered face grave. Around him sat the military commanders, intelligence chiefs, and colonial governors who held humanity's fate in their hands. But their eyes were not on charts or battle plans. Instead, they stared at the holographic display showing 342 small faces. Ladies and gentlemen, Admiral Okafor began, his voice quiet but carrying easily through the chamber. We are here because someone made a terrible mistake. They believed they understood human warfare. They studied our conflicts, our rules of engagement, our mercy toward defeated enemies. They think they know what we are capable of. He paused, his eyes moving from face to face around the table. They are wrong. General Harrison Webb, commander of the Colonial Defense Forces, leaned forward. His scarred face bore witness to 30 years of keeping the peace on frontier worlds. Admiral, the Zarthul have 12 worlds and a fleet of over 3,000 ships. Their military doctrine is based on total warfare. They don't take prisoners, they don't recognize civilian targets, and they don't negotiate. I know what they are, General, Okafor replied. The question is, do they know what we are? Across the galaxy, a transformation was beginning. On every human world, in every system, quiet orders were being carried out. The changes seemed small at first, barely noticeable to outside observers. Merchant ships suddenly canceled their trade routes. Massive cargo vessels that had carried goods between the stars for decades simply disappeared from shipping lanes. Mining operations on asteroid belts went silent overnight. Civilian manufacturing plants stopped producing consumer goods and began working on classified projects. On New Terra, Captain Marcus Rodriguez watched as his freight company's entire fleet was requisitioned by the military. 50 massive cargo haulers, each capable of carrying thousands of tons, were being fitted with weapon systems he had never seen before. What are they turning us into? Asked his co-pilot, a young woman named Sarah Kim. Marcus watched as technicians installed missile pods where cargo holds used to be, something the galaxy has never seen before. The mobilization was unlike anything in human history. This was not the organized chaos of preparing for a normal war. This was methodical, planned, and terrifyingly efficient. Every human seemed to know exactly what needed to be done, as if they had been preparing for this moment their entire lives. Dr. Elizabeth Chen worked in her laboratory on Mars, developing new medical technologies, or at least that's what her alien colleagues thought she did. In reality, her research focused on biological warfare systems that could target specific alien DNA. As she worked, she thought about the children who had died at New Haven. Several had been patients of hers over the years. They want to play by different rules, she murmured to herself as she prepared another test sample. Let's show them what different rules look like. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, Commander Sarah Kim led a black operations mission into Zarthul territory. Her ship was invisible to their sensors using technology the galaxy's other species didn't know existed. They slipped past patrol fleets like ghosts, gathering intelligence that would change everything. What they discovered in the Zarthul communications networks was worse than anyone had imagined. The attack on New Haven had not been a mistake. It had not been an accident. It had been planned, discussed, and approved at the highest levels of the Zarthul military. Target confirmed as human civilian facility housing enemy young, read one transmission. Psychological impact assessment. Maximum damage to human morale through targeting of emotional weakness. Another message was even more damning. Successful. Elimination of human breeding stock will demonstrate Zarthul superiority over weak, sentiment-driven species. Commander Kim read the intercepted messages with growing horror and rage. The Zarthul had not just killed children. They had murdered them deliberately, coldly, as a weapon against the human spirit. She transmitted the intelligence back to Luna with a simple message. They knew exactly what they were doing. The intelligence reached Admiral Okafor's desk within hours. He read it in silence, his hands steady despite the fury building in his chest. Then he called together his senior staff. The rules have changed, he told them. For 200 years we have fought by the galaxy's standards. We have shown mercy to defeated enemies. We have protected civilian targets. We have fought wars as if they were games with rules and referees. He stood up, walking to the massive star map that dominated one wall of the chamber. The Zarthul have shown us that they do not fight by these rules. They target children. They use terror as a weapon. They see mercy as weakness. He turned back to his officers. So be it. If they want to see what humans are really capable of, we will show them. Across the galaxy, alien species were beginning to notice the changes in human behavior. The Klaxi, an insectoid race that had traded with humans for generations, found their communications unanswered. The crystalline Aurelius discovered that Human merchants were no longer accepting their business. Ambassador Clickstar of the Klaxi tried to contact human diplomatic stations throughout the week. Every message went unanswered. Finally, in desperation, he traveled to the human embassy on Sanctuary Station. The embassy was closed. Not temporarily, not for maintenance, but permanently. A single sign hung on the door in 12 languages. Humanity is currently unavailable for diplomatic relations. Do not attempt contact. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Species that had worked with humans for centuries found themselves suddenly cut off. Trade agreements were suspended. Scientific collaborations ended without explanation. Military cooperation treaties were quietly canceled. The alien governments grew nervous. Humans were supposed to be predictable. They were supposed to be emotional, quick to anger, but quick to forgive. They were supposed to respond to the attack on New Haven with demands for justice, calls for trials, maybe economic sanctions. Instead, they had simply vanished from galactic society. On Zarthul Prime, High Commander Vexkar read the intelligence reports with satisfaction. The humans were behaving exactly as predicted. They were withdrawing, isolating themselves, probably preparing to negotiate from a position of weakness. The psychological warfare was successful, he told his war council. The humans are broken. They will come crawling to us within days, begging for peace. Admiral Thexvar, the commander who had ordered the attack on New Haven, nodded in agreement. Humans are weak creatures who worship their offspring. We have shown them the price of defying the hegemony. They could not have been more wrong. In the depths of human space, the greatest military buildup in galactic history was reaching completion. Fleets that had been scattered across hundreds of systems were converging on rally points. Weapons that existed only in classified research files were being mass-produced. Soldiers were being briefed on combat doctrines that had never been used in actual warfare. And in the center of it all, Fleet Admiral Chen Okafor prepared to send a message that would change the galaxy forever. The transmission was brief, sent simultaneously to every Zarthul military command and broadcast on all open channels so that every species in the galaxy could hear it. To the hegemony of Zarthul, you will return the bodies of our children for proper burial. You will surrender those responsible for planning and executing the attack on New Haven Orphanage. You will publicly acknowledge your war crime and pay reparations to the families of the victims. You have 168 hours to comply. This is not a negotiation. This is notification. High Commander Vexkar laughed when he received the message. Look how the weak humans beg for their dead. They still believe in their pathetic rules of war. He drafted a reply immediately. The hegemony of Zarthul does not negotiate with inferior species. Your children died because you were too weak to protect them. Surrender your colonies to us or more will die. The message was transmitted across the galaxy, a public insult designed to humiliate humanity before all the watching species. The response came not in words, but in action. Every human ship in the galaxy simultaneously changed course. Trade vessels, exploration ships, diplomatic couriers, even tourist transports began moving with military precision toward the borders of Zarthul space. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. In his command center on Abat, Luna, Admiral Okafor watched the countdown timer reach 0. 168 hours had passed. The Zarthul had not only refused his demands, they had mocked them publicly. He opened the communication channel to every human fleet commander in the galaxy and spoke the words that would begin the most total war in galactic history. Operation Orphan's Vengeance is now active. Rules of engagement there are none. Fight until they surrender unconditionally or cease to exist as a military force. Show them what complete war looks like. Across human space, warships that had been disguised as merchant vessels dropped their false hulls. Mining ships revealed hidden missile batteries. Explorer craft activated weapon systems that shouldn't have been able to fit in their holds. The 168-hour deadline expired at exactly 800 hours Galactic Standard Time. High Commander Vexkar had spent those 7 days preparing his fleets for what he expected to be a simple police action against the emotional humans. His war rooms buzzed with confidence as officers planned their next moves. "The humans will come at us with their usual tactics," he told his assembled commanders. "They will try to minimize civilian casualties. They will attempt to capture rather than kill. They will follow their precious rules of war." His reptilian features twisted into what passed for a smile among the Zarthul. "We will crush them, as we have crushed every other weak species." The Zarthul response to humanity's ultimatum came in the form of plasma fire. The human cargo ship Gentle Mercy, flying under a Red Cross medical flag, had approached the New Haven system to collect the remains of the dead children. It was unarmed, broadcasting peaceful intentions on all channels. The Zarthul destroyer Bloodfang destroyed it without warning. 37 crew members died instantly, their only crime being their desire to bring home the bodies of murdered children for proper burial. Admiral Thexavar transmitted the destruction live to human space, his voice filled with cruel satisfaction. "Let this be a lesson to all humans. Your sentiment is weakness. Your mercy is foolishness. We will teach you the price of defying the hegemony." The message was received in Fleet Admiral Okafor's command center beneath Luna. The assembled staff watched in silence as good people died for trying to honor the dead. Several officers clenched their fists. Others looked away from the screens. All of them waited for their admiral's response. Okafor watched the transmission twice, his face showing no emotion. Then he turned to his communications officer. "Send activation code Orphan 7 to all fleet commanders." The officer's hands hesitated over the controls. Protocol 7 had never been used in actual combat. It existed only in theoretical war doctrine, a last resort that military planners hoped would never be necessary. The protocol had one simple premise: complete victory by any means necessary. "Sir," the communications officer said quietly, "Protocol 7 suspends all rules of engagement." "Are you certain?" Admiral Okafor looked once more at the screens showing the destruction of the Gentle Mercy. "They want to show us what war without rules looks like. Activate the protocol. Show them what war without rules really means." The first strike came from an impossible direction. The Zarthul homeworld boasted the most powerful orbital defense network in their empire, energy shields that could stop fleet bombardments, missile batteries that could destroy incoming ships while they were still light hours away, sensor arrays that could detect a single fighter craft anywhere in the system. None of it mattered. The attack began with every space elevator on Zarthul Prime simply falling out of the sky. The massive structures that connected the planet's surface to orbital facilities were severed simultaneously by weapons no one saw coming. Millions of tons of metal and composite materials crashed into cities below, but with surgical precision that avoided civilian areas. Within minutes, every orbital, factory, communications satellite, and defense platform around the planet was gone. Not destroyed by conventional weapons, but erased by directed energy beams that appeared from empty space. The Zarthul fleet in orbit found itself facing enemies that couldn't be seen, couldn't be targeted, and couldn't be stopped. Admiral Korthax, commanding the Zarthul home fleet, frantically tried to coordinate his ship's response. "Where are they? Our sensors show nothing." His weapons officer stared at his instruments in confusion. "Sir, the attacks are coming from everywhere and nowhere. We can't get a lock on any targets." The answer to their confusion lay in technology. The galaxy had never seen before. Human ships equipped with stealth systems that bent light around their hulls. Weapons platforms disguised as asteroids. Mining drones converted into kinetic kill vehicles that struck with the force of falling moons. But the most terrifying aspect of the attack was its precision. Every military target was eliminated with surgical accuracy, while civilian areas remained untouched. Hospitals continued to receive power. Schools stayed safe. Residential districts were carefully avoided. The message was clear. Humans could have killed everyone but chose not to. This time, High Commander Vexkar watched his empire's defenses crumble from his command bunker deep beneath the capital city. In 6 hours, the Zarthul had lost more military assets than in the previous century of conquest, and they still hadn't seen a single human ship. "How is this possible?" he demanded of his intelligence chief. "Our spies reported that humans fight. with small fleets and defensive strategies. Where did this technology come from? The intelligence chief, a scarred veteran named Grixtar, studied the reports with growing dread. Sir, I believe we may have misunderstood human capabilities. What we interpreted as their preferred fighting style may have been voluntary restraint. Before Vexcar could respond, every screen in the bunker activated simultaneously. The face that appeared was not human. It was artificial, a computer-generated image that spoke in a perfectly calm voice. People of Zarthul Prime, this is a message from the Human Defense Consortium. Your military has committed crimes against children. Your leaders have mocked our attempts at peaceful resolution. From this moment forward, we will demonstrate what war looks like when humans are no longer bound by mercy. The transmission ended, replaced by something that chilled the blood of every Zarthul who heard it. The sound of children singing. The voices of the orphans who had died at New Haven, recovered from the facility's security recordings. Lullabies, in a dozen different languages. Happy songs about friendship and hope. The innocent sounds of childhood that would never be heard again. The broadcast continued 24 hours a day on every frequency, impossible to block or trace. Across the Zarthul Empire, the voices of dead children became a constant reminder of what had been done and what was coming in return. Other species across the galaxy watched in growing horror as reports came in from Zarthul space. The Klaxi, ambassador to the Galactic Council, called for an emergency session. The wise ethereal syndicate offered to mediate. The Aquatic Depths Collective pleaded for restraint. Every offer of intervention received the same response, delivered by human diplomatic AIs. This matter is between humanity and those who murdered our children. Any attempt to interfere will be treated as an act of war. The message was polite, professional, and absolutely terrifying in its implications. On the third day of the war, High Commander Vexcar made a desperate decision. If the humans wanted to fight without rules, he would show them what the Zarthul were truly capable of. He ordered his remaining forces to use civilian populations as shields, placing military installations in hospitals and schools. The human response demonstrated capabilities that defied understanding. Precision kinetic strikes removed weapons, platforms from the roofs of hospitals without harming a single patient inside. Soldiers appeared inside impregnable underground bunkers with no explanation of how they had gotten there. Zarthul commanders began disappearing from their own headquarters, found days later in human detention facilities on the other side of the galaxy. Captain Rextor of the Zarthul 15th Infantry had been a warrior his entire life. He had conquered worlds, broken enemy armies, and never known fear. But as he sat in his command post, watching his forces melt away against an enemy he couldn't see or fight, he began to understand what terror meant. His communications officer looked up from his console with wide, frightened eyes. "Sir, we've lost contact with the 3rd, 7th, and 12th battalions. Our perimeter sensors show no hostile activity, but our troops are just gone." Rextor checked his own instruments. According to every scanner, every detection system, every surveillance device, the area around their base was completely empty. No enemies, no movement, no threat. But every hour, more of his soldiers vanished. On the 5th day, Rextor found a message waiting on his personal terminal when he woke up. It was written in perfect Zarthul script. "Your war is with us, not with civilians. Remove your weapons from the hospital, and your soldiers will be returned unharmed. Continue using innocent lives as shields, and you will learn why humans are considered the most dangerous species in the galaxy when their restraint is removed." The message was signed simply, "The shadows you cannot see." Rextor looked around his command post. His own officers watched him with fear in their eyes. Every one of them was thinking the same thing. If humans could place a message on his personal terminal, they could have placed a bomb just as easily. Within hours, Zarthul military installations began withdrawing from civilian areas across their empire. But for humanity, this was only the beginning. Deep in human space, Dr. Elizabeth Chen put the finishing touches on her latest creation. The biological agent was specifically designed to target Zarthul biochemistry, causing their natural armor plates to weaken and fall off. It wouldn't kill them, but it would leave them vulnerable and humiliated. "For the children," she whispered as she sealed the containers for deployment. Admiral Okafor studied the tactical reports from across the front lines. In 5 days, human forces had systematically dismantled the military infrastructure of an empire that spanned 12 worlds. The galaxy watched in growing terror as Phase 2 of humanity's war began. What they witnessed challenged everything they thought they knew about human warfare, human technology, and human nature itself. The biological weapon struck first. Across 12 Zarthul worlds, the proud warriors who had built their culture on physical intimidation woke up to find their scales falling out. Their natural armor, the source of their confidence in battle, began to crack and peel away like old paint. Within days, warriors who had terrified entire star systems looked as vulnerable as newborn hatchlings. Dr. Elizabeth Chen monitored the deployment from her laboratory on Mars. The weapon was precisely calibrated, painful and humiliating, but not fatal. Every Zarthul would survive, but they would carry the scars of their actions for the rest of their lives. "Biological warfare is forbidden by the Galactic Convention," her assistant, Dr. Park, said quietly as he read the deployment reports. "So, is murdering children," Dr. Chen replied without looking up from her screens. "They chose to fight by different rules. Now they get to live with the consequences." The psychological impact was devastating. Zarthul society was built on the concept of physical dominance. Their entire military hierarchy depended on the appearance of strength. Seeing their warriors reduced to soft-skinned beings who could be injured by weapons that wouldn't even scratch normal Zarthul armor destroyed more than their bodies. It destroyed their identity. Commander Grixtar, the Zarthul intelligence chief, stared at his own reflection in horror. His once magnificent scales had fallen away, leaving mottled, tender skin that looked almost human. Around him, his staff suffered the same fate. The elite warriors of the hegemony looked like frightened civilians. "How long will this last?" he asked the medical officer. The doctor's response was worse than death. "Unknown. The biological agent appears to have permanently altered our genetic structure. We may never grow our scales back." Meanwhile, the economic destruction continued with surgical precision. Every Zarthul mining operation ceased to function as their equipment mysteriously failed. Manufacturing plants found their systems infected, with viruses that made them produce useless junk instead of military supplies. Food production facilities were reduced to rubble, but with such careful targeting that storage warehouses full of civilian supplies remained completely untouched. The message was clear. Humans could starve the entire Zarthul population, but chose to target only military assets. The mercy was more terrifying than cruelty would have been, because it demonstrated complete control. High Commander Vexkar received daily reports of the economic collapse from his deep bunker. The numbers were staggering. In 10 days, the Zarthul Empire had lost 90% of its military production capacity. Their ability to feed, supply, and equip their armies was gone. "How are they doing this?" he demanded of his remaining staff. "Our economic centers are scattered across 12 worlds, protected by the best defenses in the galaxy. How are humans reaching them all simultaneously?" The answer came from an unexpected source: intercepted human communications. The Zarthul intelligence network had been trying for days to crack human encryption, and finally succeeded in decoding a single message. What they found destroyed their last hopes. The message was a shopping list, a routine supply request from a human mining operation. But the quantities were impossible. Requesting 50,000 tons of refined titanium, 100,000 cubic meters of liquid oxygen, and 25,000 industrial fabricators for Project Deep Strike. Grixtar stared at the decoded message in disbelief. These numbers represent more industrial capacity than our entire empire possesses. How many ships do the humans have? The terrible truth began to dawn on the Zarthul leadership. Everything they thought they knew about human industrial capacity was wrong. The peaceful merchant vessels they had observed for generations, the small defensive fleets, the limited colonies, It had all been a facade. The galaxy's most peaceful species had been quietly building the most powerful military-industrial complex in galactic history, but the most horrifying discovery was yet to come. On the 15th day of the war, Zarthul forces captured a human prisoner during a raid on one of their supply lines. The prisoner was a young man named James Connor, a maintenance technician from the human fleet. Under interrogation, he revealed information that changed everything the Zarthul thought they knew about their enemies. "You've been watching us for decades," James said to his captors, "studying our tactics, learning our weaknesses. You think you understand human warfare because you've seen us fight defensive actions against pirates and raiders." He laughed, the sound carrying no humor at all. "You have no idea what we're really capable of. Everything you've seen, the mercy, the restraint, the careful protection of civilians, that was us being nice. We've been playing by your rules because we chose to, but you killed our children. You crossed the only line that matters." The interrogator, a Zarthul intelligence officer named Kexivor, pressed for more information. "What capabilities are you hiding? What weapons do you possess?" James looked directly at him with eyes that held no fear. "We've been preparing for this war for 300 years. Every time your species conquered another world, we took notes. Every time you broke a treaty or committed an atrocity, we planned our response. We know everything about you, your biology, your psychology, your technology, your culture. We've been ready for this fight since before you knew humans existed." The interrogation recordings were transmitted to High Command within hours. The implications were staggering. For 3 centuries, while the galaxy believed humans were peaceful explorers and traders, they had actually been conducting the most comprehensive intelligence operation in galactic history. Vexkar read the transcripts in his bunker, surrounded by the few staff officers who hadn't deserted or been captured. His scales, what few remained after the biological weapon, trembled as the full scope of humanity's deception became clear. "They've been watching us all along," he whispered, "learning our weaknesses, planning for this exact scenario." His communications officer, a young Zarthul named Texrin, looked up from her console. "Sir, we're receiving reports from across the Empire. Our clone production facilities have been hit by some kind of genetic virus. The cloning process is failing on every world." This was the blow that broke the Zarthul completely. For generations, they had maintained their military superiority through cloned warriors, perfect soldiers bred for combat and completely loyal to the hegemony. The cloning facilities were their most closely guarded secret, hidden deep in asteroid bases that supposedly no outsider knew about. The human genetic virus didn't just shut down the cloning process. It made it permanently impossible. The biological mechanisms that allowed Zarthul cloning simply stopped working. Centuries of genetic engineering were undone in a matter of hours. Dr. Yextal, the chief scientist of the cloning program, sent his final report before fleeing into exile. "The human weapon is beyond our understanding. It targets specific genetic markers that are unique to our cloning process. Reversing the damage would require rebuilding our entire genetic database from scratch, work that would take centuries, assuming it's even possible." Individual stories of human capabilities began to spread throughout the Zarthul military. Soldiers reported encountering human operatives in sealed underground facilities. With no explanation of how they had gotten inside, commanders discovered that their most secure communications had been intercepted for months. Entire units found themselves surrounded by enemies they couldn't see, couldn't fight, and couldn't escape. Lieutenant Zexmar had been stationed at Firebase 7, an impregnable fortress built into the heart of an asteroid. The base was completely self-contained, with its own air supply, power generation, and food production. Access was possible only through a single heavily guarded tunnel. On the 20th day of the war, Zexmar woke up to find a human sitting at his desk, calmly reading through classified documents. The human looked up as Zexmar entered the room. "Good morning, Lieutenant. My name is Captain Sarah Kim. I need to ask you some questions about your base's defensive capabilities." "How did you get in here?" Zexmar stammered, reaching for his sidearm. The human held up the weapon, his weapon, showing that she had somehow taken it without him noticing. Trade secret. Now about those defensive systems. Are you willing to cooperate, or do I need to ask less politely? Similar encounters were reported across the Zarthul Empire. Human operatives appeared in sealed bunkers, on isolated space stations, and inside moving vehicles. They conducted their business with professional efficiency, gathering intelligence, or removing key personnel before vanishing as mysteriously as they had arrived. The psychological impact was devastating. Zarthul commanders began suffering from paranoia and insomnia. If humans could appear anywhere, at any time, then nowhere was safe. The mighty warriors who had once conquered worlds now lived in constant fear of shadows. But perhaps the most terrifying aspect of human capabilities was revealed when several Zarthul worlds attempted to form a secret alliance with other species to gain advanced weapons. The Nixari, a warrior race known for their plasma cannons, agreed to supply the Zarthul with their latest military technology. High Commander Vexkar stared at the human woman on his screen, trying to understand what she meant. What could humans possibly have that belonged to him? His empire was in ruins, his military destroyed, his people broken and afraid. Admiral Sarah, Chen smiled coldly. 22 days ago, you ordered the construction of a planet-killer weapon, a beam capable of destroying entire worlds, built in secret on the dark side of Morthak, your empire's most distant moon. You planned to use it as your final gambit against Earth itself. Vexkar's blood ran cold. The Omega Cannon was the hegemony's most classified project. Only a handful of beings in the entire galaxy knew of its existence. The moon base was hidden behind sensor scramblers and protected by their best stealth technology. Impossible, he whispered. No one knows about— We know about everything, Admiral Chen interrupted. We've known about your planet killer since you began construction 6 months ago. We've watched you build it. We've monitored your test sequences. We know exactly what you plan to do with it. The screen split, showing surveillance footage from inside the secret moon base. Zarthul technicians worked frantically on the massive weapon, its crystalline focusing array gleaming under artificial lights. The timestamp showed the feed was live. Your weapon is fully operational, Chen continued. In fact, your technicians activated it 3 hours ago. The targeting system is locked onto Earth. The charging sequence has begun. In approximately 6 hours, your Omega Cannon will fire the most powerful energy beam ever created, capable of cracking a planet's core. Vexkar couldn't believe what he was hearing. If the weapon was operational, if it was already charging, then humanity was doomed. Earth would be destroyed and the war would be over. Victory would belong to the hegemony after all. Why are you telling me this? He asked, confused by the human's calm demeanor. Admiral Chen's smile grew wider, and Vexkar suddenly understood that he was looking at the face of absolute confidence. Because I want you to watch what happens next. Across the galaxy, every major government, military installation, and news network received the same transmission. The human broadcast was simple and direct, transmitted simultaneously to billions of beings on thousands of worlds. People of the galaxy, Admiral Chen said, her image appearing on screens throughout civilized space. 23 days ago, the Zarthul hegemony murdered 342 children in an unprovoked attack on a civilian orphanage. Today, they have activated a planet-killer weapon targeted at Earth, home to 8 billion innocent humans. The camera angle shifted, showing the secret moon base and its massive weapon. The Omega Cannon was clearly visible, its energy collectors glowing with building power. We could destroy this weapon before it fires. We could evacuate Earth's population. We could intercept the beam with our defensive systems. Instead, we have chosen a different response. We want every species in the galaxy to witness what happens when someone threatens to commit genocide against humanity. The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy to stare in horrified fascination at the images of the charging planet killer. On Earth itself, the population received a different message. President Maria Santos appeared on every communication channel, her voice calm and reassuring. Citizens of Earth, you are aware of the Zarthul weapon targeting our world. I want you to know that you are in no danger. Our defense forces have The situation completely under control. Continue with your daily activities. Take care of your families. Trust in our protection. The message was brief, but it had an extraordinary effect. Instead of panic, instead of evacuation, the people of Earth simply continued their lives. Children played in parks. People went to work. Families gathered for dinner. The galaxy watched in amazement as 8 billion humans faced potential annihilation, with complete calm. Either they had absolute faith in their military's capabilities, or they knew something the rest of the galaxy didn't. In his bunker, Vexcar monitored the countdown to the weapons firing. 5 hours, 4 hours, 3 hours. The energy readings climbed steadily toward maximum power. Perhaps the humans are not as prepared as they claimed, he said to his remaining staff. Perhaps they are simply putting on a brave face while they prepare for the end. 2 hours remaining. 1 hour. 30 minutes. The Omega cannon reached full power. Its targeting systems locked onto Earth with precision that could split a moon. The most powerful weapon ever created by the Zarthul hegemony, prepared to fire. 15 minutes. 10 minutes. 5 minutes. The weapon fired. The massive energy beam containing the power of a dozen stars lanced across space toward the human homeworld. Every sensor in the galaxy tracked its progress. Every government calculated the time until impact. Every species held their breath, waiting for the moment when Earth died. The beam reached Earth's solar system. It passed Jupiter, Mars, the asteroid belt. Nothing interrupted its path. No human ships moved to intercept it. No defensive systems activated. The beam struck Earth directly and simply vanished, not deflected, not absorbed, not dispersed. The most powerful weapon in galactic history struck the human homeworld and disappeared as if it had never existed. On Earth, people looked up at the sky for a moment, saw a brief flash of pretty lights, then went back to their conversations. Children pointed at the light show and clapped their hands. A few people took pictures. The galaxy stared in stunned silence at their instruments, trying to understand what they had witnessed. The weapon had definitely fired. The beam had definitely reached its target. But Earth remained untouched. Its cities intact, its people unharmed. High Commander Vexcar watched his displays in total disbelief. The readings made no sense. According to every sensor, every measurement, every calculation, his ultimate weapon had simply ceased to exist the moment it touched Earth's atmosphere. Admiral Chen's face reappeared on his screens, her expression unchanged. "Did you enjoy the demonstration?" she asked pleasantly. "Your weapon performed exactly as designed. The energy output was impressive, the targeting was precise, and the beam reached Earth without any interference from our forces." She paused, letting the words sink in. "What you witnessed was not our defensive technology. That was simply Earth protecting itself. You see, Commander, there are some things in this galaxy that are older than your empire, more powerful than your weapons, and far beyond your understanding." The implications hit Vexcar like a physical blow. Humans hadn't defended their homeworld with ships or shields or advanced technology. Something about Earth itself had simply erased the most powerful weapon ever created. "What are you?" he whispered. "We are what we have always been," Admiral Chen replied. "We are humans. We are the species that turned a death world into a garden. We are the children of a planet that has survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, and solar storms that would sterilize most worlds. We are the descendants of creatures who climbed out of the ocean, looked at the stars, and decided to go there." Her image shifted, showing scenes from Earth, vast cities that reached toward the sky, oceans teeming with life, forests that stretched beyond the horizon, and always, everywhere, humans working together to build something greater than themselves. Your people build weapons to destroy worlds. We built ourselves into something that worlds refuse to destroy. Across the galaxy, the remaining Zarthul military installations began broadcasting surrender signals. The sight of their ultimate weapon being casually dismissed by the human homeworld broke the last remnants of their will to fight. But Vexcar's humiliation was not yet complete. "Now," Admiral Chen continued, Let me show you what we do to those who threaten our children. The moon containing the Omega cannon didn't explode. It didn't crack apart or burn or suffer any visible damage. Instead, it simply stopped being there. One moment, the secret base and its massive weapon existed in normal space. The next moment, there was nothing but empty vacuum where a moon had been. Not destroyed, not vaporized. Gone. Completely and utterly removed from reality as if it had never existed. The message was clear. Humans possessed capabilities that went beyond advanced technology, beyond superior strategy, beyond conventional understanding. They had become something that the galaxy's rules no longer applied to. Within hours, formal surrender documents arrived at every human military installation. The Zarthul hegemony capitulated completely and unconditionally. They agreed to face war crimes trials, pay reparations to the victims' families, undergo complete demilitarization, and submit to human oversight of their government. But for humanity, the real victory came in a quiet ceremony on the world where it all began. The New Haven Memorial was built on the exact site where the orphanage had stood. Representatives from every species in the galaxy attended the dedication ceremony, not as allies or trading partners, but as witnesses to something they needed to understand. The memorial itself was simple, a garden where children could play, surrounded by 342 small monuments, each bearing the name, species, and age of a murdered child. At the center stood a single inscription in every language spoken in the galaxy. They were under our protection. Fleet Admiral Chen Okafor stood before the assembled crowd, his weathered face showing the weight of the past months. Behind him, the gentle sounds of children playing drifted across the memorial grounds, new orphans from many worlds who had found safety in humanity's protection.